checking just for a moment my levels on YouTube and on Twitch, just to see if the music audio is chilling. But YouTube doesn't say I'm live yet. What is that? Oh, you can actually, there's a button. Click view on YouTube. Okay, so it looks like it's... That didn't mean to do that. It looks like it says it's public on YouTube. Alright, let's just view on Twitch. Oh, that also says unauthorized. Okay, so that must be a restream thing. I'll just go pull it up here. Apologies for the double sound for a second. I'm such a noob. I don't even get my channel. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. That sounds awful, but let's get started here. So yesterday we worked on a couple interview prep questions. The reason why I'm doing this, I'm a software engineer. I've been working professionally in the industry for 8 years. Had a wide ranging number of jobs. I mean, it's all doing a lot of the same similar stuff, but I've worked at a lot of different companies, all the way down from 3-person startups to 25,000 person companies, mainly focusing on back-end, front-end, so like full stack development. My favorite thing to do, I guess, in the coding space is work on front ends. I have spent like probably half of my career, almost exactly half, like solely focusing on front end, doing React, JavaScript, TypeScript work. And that's really, I think that's more what I like to do. I'm still good at back end, can do system design and architecture and all of that stuff, but front end is where I like to spend my time. But I'm in between jobs at the moment, and it's been a while since I've done any interviewing. The last couple jobs I've gotten have been through friends. So I would definitely say my interviewing, being on the interviewee side, is definitely not as fresh, not as good as being the interviewer. I've conducted a couple hundred interviews now over the last several years. And so I feel like I have a good sense of what interviewers are looking for. But, you know, when I'm on the other side, I still have to be able to explain myself, write code. And so being here, streaming, kind of documenting my experience and the process that I go through to prepare, and just like getting in front of a mic and talking is pretty similar to what a interview experience would be. So I'm just going to be working through LeetCode problems. There's a group I joined when I signed up, created a new account. It was called Top 150 Interview, or Top Interview 150. And I've done the first 2 questions, merge sorted array and remove element. Both were easy. We're going on to another easy one. Remove duplicates. So we'll jump right in. All right, given an integer array nums sorted in non-decreasing order, they're using this non-decreasing order language like they did yesterday when I was working on this, which just means in ascending order. Remove the duplicates in place such that each unique element appears only once. The relative order of the elements should be kept the same. Then return the number of unique elements in nums. Okay, so this is very similar actually to remove element. Oh, okay, remove duplicates. So this question was essentially saying, return the number of duplicate elements or not duplicate elements. And then do a kind of a sort or rearrange in place. Talked about this yesterday. Using this pattern in JavaScript, TypeScript, where you're modifying an array or an object within a function and then expecting to use that array or object outside of the function is usually not going to lead to good things. So if you don't know, JavaScript, TypeScript are garbage collected languages. You don't have to allocate memory, which means that the language does a lot for you. So in this particular case, if you pass in this nums array, you can modify nums and say nums 0 equals foo, for example. And then if you're calling remove duplicates with an array, bar, if you were to say like const nums equals bar or whatever and pass it in, if you were to console log nums after this, nums would just be a single element of foo. And that's, you can code that way. And if you're expecting that to happen, then that's fine. But typically, it's going to lead to confusion down the road. And so typically, if you're working in like an environment with more than one software engineer, you want to do things in a way where everyone is going to understand what's happening. And typically, accessing an array outside of passing it into a function, accessing it after when you've modified it within a function can just lead to a lot of just general issues. But let's get started on this question. Consider the number of unique elements of nums to be k. To get accepted, you need to do the following things. Change the array nums such that the first k elements of nums contain the unique elements in the order they were present in nums initially. Change the array nums such that the first k elements of nums contain the unique elements in the order they were present in nums initially. The remaining elements of nums are not important, as well as the size of nums. Okay, so this is kind of the same thing as yesterday's question. You're gonna get an array of a certain size. All you have to do is modify the first n elements with what this question is asking you to do, and you can freely ignore everything afterwards. There's a custom judge. The judge will test your solution with the following code. Int nums, so there's the input array, and there's the expected nums with the expected length. K equals remove duplicates, so this is the number we're returning from the function, and it calls your implementation. Assert that k is the length of expected nums, so you've basically modified the correct number of elements, and then iterate over nums and make sure that it lines up with what expected nums is supposed to be. So if all those conditions hold true, then the solution will pass. So example 1, the nums array is 3 elements, 1, 1, and 2. The output is 2, where it's 1 and 2, so your function should return k equals 2 with the first 2 elements of nums being 1 and 2 respectively. Okay, so essentially we want an array with unique elements in that. So if there are 5 2s, the output should only have 1 2. If there are 7 1s, the output should only have 1 1. Again, doesn't matter if what you leave in the array beyond the return k, it's not checking for that. So the constraints, the numbers can be from 1 to 3 times 10 to the 4th, which doesn't really matter too much. We're just dealing with integers here. And then the number of elements, the length of the array can be all the way from 1 element to 3 times 10 to the 4th. The elements themselves can be from -100 inclusive to 100 inclusive. And nums is sorted in non-decreasing order, so ascending order. I don't know why they say non-decreasing order. Maybe there's some technical reason for that. But let's get started. All right, so we're just looking for unique elements here, and we need to modify nums in place. Let's see. The input are the inputs in ascending order. So given an integer in okay, so it is in ascending order. So this makes this really easy. We don't have to keep track of, two things. One, we don't need to sort the array to begin with because it's already sorted in ascending order. And two, we don't have to keep track of any of the elements because as we're stepping up the array, we can just modify and check. So we'll say let j equals 0. So we're counting from the 0th element. So for let I equals 0, I is less than nums dot length I plus plus. So if nums of I okay, so actually we'll start at index of 1 and I'll tell you why in a sec. So if nums I is not equal to nums j, actually we'll start, hold on, I think we'll start, because the first element will always be fine. The first element's always going to be valid, so we can just start one above that. So if nums I is not equal to nums j minus 1, then we want to set nums I equal to nums j and then increment j. When this happens, we also want to keep track of the count. So we will say count plus plus. And then we'll return count. Okay, so what this is basically doing is starting from the second element, because the first element is always going to be valid, and our constraints are that there will always be at least length of 1. So this covers the case where, wait, is count supposed to be, hold on. Return k is supposed to be, then return the number of unique elements in nums. Okay, so we're, yeah, so this should be fine. So actually, no, we want to start with, there will always be one unique element, so we want to start the count at 1. So this covers the base case. So this is basically saying if there's a single element in nums, then we're fine. We return count of 1, and nums stays exactly the same, so this will pass. In the case of nums having length, well, even length 2 is always going to be, oh no, it's not always going to be unique. So what we're saying, if, let's just say it's length 2 with 2 elements that are both 1. So if the like sample is 1, 1, we're gonna basically ignore 1, and so we're gonna start with this second element here. So if 1 does not equal, in this case, 1, then we're going to set the second element to that value and then increment the count and increment j as well. So that's a relatively simple case where nothing's going to happen. So let's go in the case of 1, 2, 2. So 1 is fine, as we've said. We get to 2, and so I is 1. So does 2 not equal 1? Yes, because remember, J is the place that we're updating in nums. Oh wait, I think I've done this wrong. So this is supposed to be J++, and this should be I. There we go. I'll do some testing in a second, but we're basically saying, does 2 not equal 1? That is true. So we say in the second element, because J is 1, set that to nums of I, which in this case is 1. So we set 2 to 2. Then we go again with J equaling 2 and I also equaling 2. If 2 does not equal 2, which is false, then we don't do anything. So I think this should be valid. Okay, so both test cases worked. Slightly more complicated. Let's submit it. But before I submit, let's just talk about runtime complexity and memory complexity. We'll start with memory complexity because it's very straightforward. We're defining 2 integers and then doing in place modifications of this array. As we saw yesterday with JavaScript, there was something weird about doing this approach. If I go back to the previous question, which is very similar, I had 2 solutions here. My first solution, which I'm calling solution 2 in this particular case, my solution 1 is my first one. I basically created created an array, and then rather than modifying in place while I was iterating through, I assigned everything to this array and then iterated through a second time to update the original nums array. But this is a slightly slower runtime because you have to iterate through at worst 2n, because where n is the length of nums. But memory-wise, for some reason, this solution was more efficient than, just slightly by like half a megabyte, more efficient than this solution, which I find odd because we're creating an array. So there might be something strange going on in JavaScript when you're doing in-place array modification. Hi, my dog's barking at me. What do you need? What's going on? There might be something weird going on with JavaScript if you're doing in-memory or in-place array modifications that I'm just not aware of. But that's a similar thing here. So I went with approach 2, where you're just doing the in-place rather than creating a separate array. It's going to be slightly faster, but it's, for whatever reason, going to be slightly more memory complex. So this is O of n, where n is the length of nums. Let's go ahead and submit and see how we do. All right, so runtime beats 80% of people, which is expected. I'm not sure how you could get too much faster than this. There's probably something you can do. I also am not sure if this is specifically for TypeScript or if this is for everyone, because I imagine, JavaScript isn't the most efficient language. It's good for most things, but it's, for high performance code, TypeScript is not going to be, JavaScript is not going to be your friend. So it's possible we're up against people writing in C, C++, some of the faster languages here, Go, Rust. Any compiled language is most likely going to be faster than JavaScript. Not by much, but Because at the end of the day, JavaScript just compiles down to C++. Now I can't remember. Is JavaScript written in C or C++? Doesn't really matter. But so from runtime, pretty decent. I don't know how much faster we're going to be able to get here. We can actually probably go look at some of the other solutions and submissions by other people. Memory-wise, if you look at the difference in memory here, we're talking about 1 megabyte. Again, I think we could shave off half a megabyte by doing the array solution that I did for the previous problem. I'm not sure why that's the case, but maybe actually it has to do. So I have two hypotheses here. One, I wonder if you free by setting nums to an empty array. I wonder if that helps with the memory complexity just slightly, but I mean, we're talking about like a megabyte here. So that it's possible that could do it. Also, the second piece is every time you run submit a solution on LeetCode, it's going to run slightly different runtime, slightly different memory. So if I submit it again, we saw 63, 53. This time we got 67 and 53. Memory complexity is probably going to stay pretty constant. Although I think it improved by 25%. But if I submit again, so it's however their servers are running. I think this is about as and see it's even slower this time. So and now my memory beats 99%. So I guess for some of these slower or not slower, but like shorter kind of quicker runtime problems, you're just going to see huge variation in this. So all right, finish that problem. Let's move on to the next one. Our first medium question. Let's see how medium difficult it is. So I think it's kind of building off of, it seems, the last two problems that we solved, or at least the name suggests that it's building off of this last one. So let's see what the differences are. Given an integer array nums sorted in non-decreasing order, so again, ascending order like we've talked about. I don't know why they're saying non-decreasing order. There might be some technical reason. Remove some duplicates in place, so exactly the same. Remove some duplicates in place. Is that how the other question? Oh, yes. Remove the duplicates, remove some duplicates in place such that each unique element appears at most twice. Okay. All right. So the relative order of the elements should be kept the same. So this is the same. Okay. Since it is impossible to change the length of the array in some languages, you must instead have the result be placed in the first part of the array. And again, going back to talking about JavaScript and it not being in a language where you're allocating memory, you can do whatever you want to arrays. You can splice, slice, push, shift, do whatever you want to them, and JavaScript will handle that all under the hood. Languages like C, C++, Rust, any compiled languages where you're allocating memory, I assume there are ways, I haven't used any of them extensively, but I assume there are ways to create like an array that can expand or shrink. It's a bit more dynamic, but typically you'll allocate a certain size for an array, and then you can't make it any larger, and that's just typically more energy efficient, or not energy efficient, memory efficient. But in JavaScript, like we said, you can do whatever you want, so that's kind of why they have this disclaimer here. So since it's impossible to change the length of the array in some languages, you must instead have the result be placed in the first part of the array, nums. More formally, if there are k elements after removing the duplicates, then the first k elements of nums should hold the final result. It does not matter what you leave behind, or leave beyond the first k elements. So what they're basically saying here is if nums is size 10 and there are only 5 or 4, I guess, because I think it's only going to be even numbers. No, you could have odd. If you have 5 elements in the array, then all that matters is modifying the first 5 elements of nums, and you can just kind of ignore the last 5. So return k after placing the final results in the first k slots of nums. Do not allocate extra space for another array. You must do this by modifying the input array in place with O of 1. Oh, Siri, what are you going on about? Okay, so this last disclaimer negates, if we go back to this question here where I have this dual solution, solution 2 and solution 1, this negates solution 1. So in this case, I created a second array, assigned to that array, and then updated the first n elements of nums, where n is the length of array, and then return k there. This solution 2, I did the in-place updates. That's the same exact thing that I did for the second remove duplicates problem. It's almost exactly the same solution, just slightly different. So we're basically going to have almost the same solution here, but for this one, the only difference being, is that you can have 2 elements that are the same rather than 1. So I think it might actually be exactly the same, except we're gonna we're gonna increase j by 2 and then update okay. Let's just go through the rest of the question and then I'll think about the solution. So again, we have another custom judge. The judge will test your solution with the following code. You have the nums array, you have the expected nums array. So this is the expected output for the first n elements of nums, where n is the size of expected nums. You call remove duplicates with the nums function. You assert that k equals the length of expected nums, which should be the case. Then you iterate through the first k elements of nums, and you ensure that they line up with expected nums. If all assertions pass, the solution is accepted. So let's look through the 2 examples here. Input nums. So we have 6 elements, 3 1s, 2 2s, and 1 3. Basically, what this question is asking us to do is return 2 elements for each number. So rather than 1 unique per number, like in the previous solution, you can now have 2 1s, 2 2s, and in this case, because there's only a single 3, 1 3, this last element of nums can be ignored, as the question was saying, because there was an extra 1 that we're just kind of throwing out the door. Explanation: your function should return k equals 5 because there are 5 unique, dually unique, I don't know exactly how you want to say that, elements, with the first 5 elements of nums being 1, 1, 2, 2, and 3 respectively. Doesn't matter, again, what you leave beyond the return k, hence they are underscores. Example 2, just a little bit longer, except this time you have 4 1s, a single 2, and 2 3s. So as we expected, you keep the 2 zeros, you just have 2 1s, a single 2, and 2 3s. You ignore the last 2, so k is 7. Yada yada, same constraints I think as the previous, oh no, actually different constraints. So the same length of an array, so from 1 to 3 times 10 to the 4th inclusive, and this time the elements within the array can be from negative 10 to the 4th inclusive all the way up to 10 to the 4th inclusive. Doesn't really matter, they're all well within the bounds of normal integers in JavaScript, so we don't have to worry too much about that since we're not doing any manual memory allocation. Okay, so similar problem to before. We're gonna say let j Whoops. What is going on? Let j equal 0. Let count, which is k in this case, equals 0. I guess I could just call it k, although count's a little bit easier to reason about when I'm using single letter variables for other things. Okay, so we're gonna want to iterate through. All right, so we actually have the same case as last time where there's always going to be, because of this first constraint, there's always going to be a single element in the nums array, which means that if nums array only has length 1, that's a valid solution. So in this case, k, count, should be 1, and then at the end, we'll just return count. So that covers our base case. So we'll have let I equal 1, because we just want to skip the first case, because it's we can just automatically assume that it's always going to be valid. Excuse me. So we'll let I equal 0, I is less than nums.length, I plus plus. Okay, so this is where it starts to get a little different. In the previous question, whoops, where did that go? In the previous question, we said when nums of I is not equal to nums j minus 1. So this was basically checking if the previous number is different, then we update the current, the next element in the array in place. The difference this time is that we can have 2 elements. So we'll basically want to have 2 if statements, or at least the way I'm thinking about it right now is we'll have 2 if statements, one checking exactly what we checked exactly what we checked in the previous problem, and then the second if statement will determine if the second element, so j minus 2, is also the same, and if that's the case, then we want to ignore it. Otherwise, we want to update. So I might get this wrong here, but if nums I does not equal nums j minus 1, then there's 2 cases. We want to update if nums j minus 2 is not the same number. Okay. So if that's the case, can I... Okay, why is this tripping me up? So if nums of I is not the same as the previous element. Oh, okay. Then we wanna do the normal update here. Okay. Then you do else if nums I is not equal nums j minus 2. So there's gonna be a case here at the beginning where this, oh, actually, is this, no, I think actually what we can do here is start at the third element, because, okay, count is, let's see, nums dot length is one, otherwise it's two. So we just want to cover that first case because this will be invalid. Okay, I think this should work. So we want to say nums of I equals nums j plus plus equals nums I count plus plus. And in this case, so if the number, oh wait, do we want to check this first? Hold on. I'm thinking we actually want to check if it equals, so if it doesn't equal what's two elements behind, then it's valid to insert. Otherwise, oh wait, actually that might be all you need to do. I think that might actually be all you need to do. Hold on. It's like basically the same thing, but you're just, hey Viniac, how's it going? I think that might be all you need. So let's walk through this using these examples. So we're skipping basically to this third element here from the start because we can assume that these two are always going to be valid. We also cover the case where nums, the length of the nums array is 1. Basically by doing this, that could be slightly more elegant, but this is basically saying if the length is 1, just make sure that count is 1, and then because 2 is greater than or equal to nums length, then we're just going to skip this for loop. So we're just going to return 1, and then nums should be fine. Otherwise, count's always going to be 2 because you're always going to have, at the bare minimum, 2 elements here that are valid. Even if, if it's 1, 1, if it's 1, 2, if it's 2, 7, like it's always going to be 2 valid elements. So that's why we're starting at the third element here. So we're basically saying for this third element, does 1 equal what's 2 spaces before? So does 1 equal 1? Yes, it does. So we're going to skip this. So then I is 3 and j is still 2. Does does 2 equal 1? No, it doesn't. And I think, wait, hold on. J minus 2. So does 2 equal I might actually need to increase j. Yeah, I think the solution I have right now is actually wrong. J is not going to get incremented enough. I think in this example, whenever you're incrementing I, you want to be incrementing j as well. might be wrong, but I think you want to do that. Okay, so all right, let's start from the beginning. We start at this element 1 here. 1 equals 1, so we ignore. So we increase j to, oh no, we don't want to do that. Never mind, let's take that back. Yeah, I think this solution should work. No, okay, I was right. So maybe we did want. What happens if you use j minus I in loop instead of j minus 2? So I is going to be incrementing faster than j. Well, in the previous example, I was going to be incrementing faster than j, so we would get negative, like indexing into the negative elements of nums, which in JavaScript will just loop you to the back end of the array, and that's not exactly what we want to do. I think we need to increment j as well as I here. No. Okay, we're close. We're very close here. What are we doing wrong? So this works fine. Then we get to where I equals 3 and j still equals 2. So j is still this element. So we should, let me run this again to see what the output is again. I'm a biology student. What the fuck? What's happening here? Yeah, we're doing, so I'm a software engineer. It's been like 5 years since I've done like interview prep, just because I've worked at 2 different companies in those 5 years, and I've, the second job I got was through a friend, and so I didn't really need to interview. So it's been a while since I've done like algorithms problems, and this is one of the elements of a software engineering interview, is to do like solve, you know, for better or worse, solve algorithms problems. Typically, like there are a number of different things you're looking for when you're interviewing someone. One of those is just like the ability to talk about a solution. You don't always need the best or even a right solution to get like a passing score for an interview, and it totally depends on the company and what you're interviewing for. But really what we're looking for is like the ability to reason about a problem, come to a, you know, reasonable solution, and then be able to explain it and talk about potential improvements. And so what I'm doing here is just working through, there's a platform called LeetCode, which just has a bunch of these questions, allows you to write code, and then submit it and see how you did. And so I'm just working through, oh, my headset's running out of battery. I'm just working through the problems in this like 150 question set, and I'm on question 4, and the first 3 were pretty easy, and this one's also relatively easy, but I'm just getting tripped up a little bit on what to do here. Same situation here, but need to start interview prep but not getting motivation to start DSA. What does DSA mean? Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm streaming right now, is because if I wasn't streaming, there would be, it wouldn't be quite as fun to do any of this. So this is, you know, a bit of motivation to get me working on some stuff. And I'm also planning to like work on, I have a personal website. I'll work on that a bit. I play fantasy football. I've built a small tool for myself for auction drafts that integrates with Sleeper. Oh, data structures and algorithms. Yeah. It's my least favorite part of coding. I find that it's you know, it feels like junior engineers tend to be better at like these kinds of questions because they've just come out of school and this was like a lot of what was taught in school. But I'd find that it's very infrequently used in the real world and in practice. You know, some people find it fun in theory. I mean, you see the people on YouTube who do like the Google coding challenges and can solve these questions, you know, because they've done a million of these questions, so they can solve them in like 2 seconds. Hello, my dog's being very needy right now. But yeah, exactly. Streaming helps keeping accountability. If no one watches, that's fine. If you guys want to watch and hang out and learn something or you know, teach me something, like that's just an added benefit of doing this. All right. So where were we? Okay, let's walk through this first problem and see why 3 ends up. Am I not? Oh, wait, that's why. So I forgot to increment J here. Hold on. Oh. Wait, did I have it right the whole time? I think somewhere in this, I forgot to increment J. Somewhere in like my adding like J++ on line 11 before. Okay, let's submit this and see if it works. Okay, it does. All right, I had it right from the beginning, and then was, you know, just made a careless mistake and was incrementing J when I didn't need to be. Okay, so it beats 80% of people in runtime and beats 82% of people in memory usage. So kind of as I was discussing before, if you run this multiple times for a specific LeetCode problem, you're going to get different results. So 60-80, 52-82. If we submit again, we're going to probably see a higher runtime, would be my guess. Yeah, 67 and very similar memory usage, almost exactly the same. So LeetCode, they have their servers where they run this code. If it's being used slightly more frequently, it's going to take a little bit longer. I have also wondered if compiled languages can have faster runtimes, because I don't know how you're shaving. I mean, it was 60 milliseconds before. I don't know how you're shaving 50 or 33% off, you know, 33% of time off, unless you like, maybe it's a premium thing and then a compiled language or something. But that was a relatively straightforward problem when I'm not tripping myself up and confusing myself. So let's move on to the next one. It's called majority element. All right, given an array nums of size n. Okay, thankfully we're not doing any in-place updates anymore, because I've talked about how terrible that is to do in JavaScript, just from a like coding perspective, or just if you're working with other people, it gets confusing very quickly. So given an array nums of size n, return the majority element. The majority element is the element that appears more than n divided by 2 times. So you may assume that the majority element always, okay, that was going to be my next question. So there will be an element in this array that appears more than half the time in the array. So I guess in the case of an even number of elements, you're going to have, so like if you had 10 elements in nums, there would be at least 6. And then in odd, it would just be, you know, if it was 11, it'd also be 6. So it'd be half rounded up. Let's go through the examples. In this case, 3, it's pretty self-explanatory. 3 appears twice, and there are only 3 elements, so that's majority. And in this case, 2 appears 4 times, and there are 7 elements, so that is also majority. Constraints, n equals the nums.length. Okay, I think it didn't need to be specified as a constraint. N is from 1 to 5 times 10 to the 4th inclusive. And then the elements within the array can be all the way down from negative 10 to the 9th to 10 to the 9th inclusive. So I don't think we should run into any integer issues there either. Follow-up, could you solve the problem in linear time and in O of 1 space? So yes, that's definitely something we can do. We'll see if my first approach should be linear time, which is just iterating through the nums array once. And then O of 1 space, I assume they're meaning like don't create an object that keeps track of. So let's do it not in O of 1 space, just to keep it simple to start with. So we're going to, and because it's relatively small, I mean, this is going to be, you know, decent space size, but we'll say we're going to have an object. So this object is going to be, in case you didn't know, I'm using TypeScript. You can use set or map to keep the count of elements in C++, though. I don't know about TypeScript. Yeah, I was going to do the same thing here. So we're just going to create an object in JavaScript or TypeScript. And in this particular case, the key is a string, and we're going to iterate. We're going to add 1 to the number when it's when we find it in the array. So we're going to do for, and I think we can just do, we don't care about like iterating, like keeping track of the index. So I think we can just do for const num of nums. So this basically takes the next, for those of you who haven't used JavaScript before, this takes the next element in the array. So if the array is like, you know, 1, 2, 3, the first time num will be 1, it'll be 2, and then it'll be 3. If this was 1, 4, 3, the same thing. It would be 1, then 4, then 3. So if O of num does not exist, so basically in JavaScript, if you try to, and this is different from different language, you know, different relative to different languages, like in certain languages you have to like check to see if the key exists using like has or get or whatever. In JavaScript, everything is essentially implicitly undefined. So if I looked for the element like, you know, 1, like the key 1 in the object O, it's going to be just putting the not essentially means that it's you're just checking to see if it doesn't exist. You could also say if O num equals undefined. That's exactly the same thing. There's also in JavaScript, just to not go down too much of a rabbit hole, the idea of null, which is actually different than undefined. Then you can start to get into some wonky stuff with the difference between equals equals, like a checking for an equivalent value versus the triple equals in JavaScript. So, but I won't get too much into that right now. All right, so if this number doesn't exist, then we essentially want to initialize it. So we'll say O of num equals 1. Otherwise, we're going to say O of num plus plus. And there's a slight optimization here you could theoretically make that says at this point, if O of num is greater than or equal to math.round nums.length divided by 2. Oops. And I think actually we can just do that up here. So const half equals not Java okay, so this might not work. JavaScript's a little weird when it comes to floating point numbers. It can sometimes like if you we saw this a lot at the company that I was last at. When you're working with when you're working with floating point numbers, you can, if you do weird subtractions, or not even weird subtractions, if you just like subtract a floating point number from another floating point number, it doesn't necessarily, like if you do 1.01 minus 0.02, it isn't always going to be 0.99. Sometimes it's like 0.9900000423, like it does some weird stuff. And so my point is, if nums.length divided by 2 is less than the halfway point, like if it's 0.499, whatever, math.round I think will round down. So there could be a bug here. My whole point of saying all that is that there just could be a bug. So we'll check that in a sec. But slight optimization here. If the count of the num key in O is greater than or equal to half, then we can just automatically return. Otherwise, you just want to look for the largest, which I guess we could actually keep track of outside of needing to do another we'll say we'll just start it at, we'll say it's undefined, and this is another thing in JavaScript, TypeScript. Hi Rafid, how's it going? Another thing in JavaScript, TypeScript is you can set something to null or undefined, and then we don't want const, and then set it to something else later. If you want to be a little more prescriptive in TypeScript, you can say this will be a number or undefined. So now you can't assign a string to it. But yeah, so we'll basically say so a couple things here. So if O num is greater than largest, O of largest, then largest becomes O of num. And also if this is starting to get this is unnecessary optimization, but we'll clean it up in a sec. If largest is undefined, then we'll set largest equal to num. Great. What are you making? I am a software engineer. I've been working professionally in the industry for like 8 years. I'm in between jobs at the moment, and I'm doing interview prep. So one of the facets of software engineering interviews is essentially getting asked different algorithms questions and then needing to solve them. So you'll get a question like this, you'll read through it, you'll kind of explain, or typically what you should do is explain what you're going to be doing, how you might approach the problem, and then once you've kind of figured out your solution, you can then start coding it and work on it, and hopefully you get the right solution. So you're tested in real time, kind of how you think about coding problems, and then just kind of like how you can explain, what you're working on. I can't tell if that's sarcastic or not. You are cool, but yeah, no, I mean, it pays the bills. It's this kind of work isn't my favorite. Algorithms, funnily enough, you don't actually do this kind of stuff in real work. But typically, but it's still something that is asked as a like standard in interviewing. Okay, so at the end we want to return largest. All right, let's just walk through this. So we're creating, and this isn't the most optimal solution in terms of O of one space, so we'll think about that after this. And I also have added some like funny optimizations that probably don't really need to be in there. Okay, so if this particular number does not exist in the object, we're going to initialize it with 1 because there's at least one count. If largest is undefined as well, we're going to say largest equals that number. Otherwise, if the number does exist in the object, we're going to increment the count by 1. We're going to check if this new number takes the place of largest. So if there are more instances of this new number than largest, we're going to set largest equal to that number. And then as a slight optimization, if we found that that number is greater than or equal to half, because we're looking for the majority element in that array. Cool is not sarcastic, I mean it. Well, thank you, I appreciate that. You want to be a code developer who develops APKs? Yeah. Apps are fun to work on. I've never personally gotten into like mobile development. I've only done like web full stack, so that's basically working on like websites and the backends that power them. But yeah, I mean, there's so much to learn in the coding space and so many great resources. I mean, if you want to get started with coding, I really should have better places to start. But really, I mean, it's just like just go online and look up like Python tutorial. Python's probably going to be one of the easiest things to get started with, and then from there kind of branch out. Don't they ask you more on system design or something? I'm new to the industry. So yes, there's multiple parts to interview, like software engineering interviews. There's generally multiple steps, and generally a lot of steps depending on the company. So if you're looking to, you'll see a wide range of like questions asked and processes depending on the company. If you're looking to get a job at a really big company like Google or Microsoft or any of the big tech companies, you're going to go through, usually multiple months of interviews, just because it takes a while to get things scheduled. But you'll have like the initial recruiter call, so that'll be a half-hour call to like kind of get you up to speed on like what the particular team or what the area of the company is working on. Then you'll do like typically what's called a phone screen. So you'll just like hop on a call with someone and answer some of these questions like I'm working on right now. Just to basically do an initial screen, like, can this person actually code? Are they just lying on their resume, or are they, an actual developer who's studied and kind of understands what's going on? So that's a relatively, you do that early on. It's relatively low pressure. It's just to weed out people who can't actually code. Then you'll go on to, it branches out from there depending on the company, but typically what you'll see is like 3 or 4 different interviews conducted over the course of a day. And this has changed a bit in COVID times and when people are working more remotely. But you'll generally have like 3 or 4 back-to-back half hour, sometimes longer interview sections where like one section will be algorithms and then another section will be what I call pair programming, where they'll be like, okay, and this totally depends on, the job you're looking to get. If you're doing more like web development or front end work, they might be like, okay, over the next hour, we're going to give you this problem to work on, and like you're going to talk about it, and we're just going to like build out this feature. Another interview section, like you're alluding to, Vinayak, is like systems design, systems architecture. So that'll be like, you'll have questions like, and this is kind of broad, but like walk through and draw a diagram for how like Twitter works, for example. And that used to be like, a more used question than it is now. But then you go up to a whiteboard and kind of draw out some of the different systems and talk about in depth, like, okay, well, how would this particular part of the system work? How would you scale it? Yada, yada. And then generally, if that all goes well, generally you'll have a final call with what's called the hiring manager. And that hiring manager is typically an engineering manager, either the team that you're hiring onto, or a like relatively adjacent team, just to do like behavioral, ask behavioral questions. So like, tell me about a time you did X. Tell me about a time you've had conflict with a coworker. How did it get resolved? Like that kind of stuff. So some of the more like behavioral questions you might get in non-technical roles. And so that's just to also weed out people who, seem like they wouldn't be either a good fit at the company or just are, showing some behaviors that may not work well for whatever reason. So really, ultimately, it becomes like a, by the end of it, between having conversations with the recruiter and scheduling and everything, it's like, 8 to 10 hours per company from end to end. So it's a lot of, there's a lot of work that goes into the process. But in some ways you could argue that that's not very much time to then be like, okay, yes, we're going to give you this offer for however many, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because that's a lot of money to like spend on like resourcing for the interviews and like getting your employees to do that, and having recruiters, and then like paying someone to come on, and like there's a lot of risk involved with hiring people because sometimes it doesn't work out, and then it's like a lot of that money is kind of a sunk cost. So it's a really intense process. Will it be more on leading and design the software rather than hard coding like some junior role? So yes, that's a good thing to bring up as well. It totally, it also depends very much on the role. So a junior engineer is going to generally have different, maybe not different questions, but a different grading rubric. So when you're a junior engineer, you're not expected to like know all the systems design and systems architecture stuff like super well. I think generally we'd look for like a good kind of good instincts, but not necessarily like the most optimal answers. But as you start to get up into the senior staff engineer, like even engineering manager type roles, you're expected to like know how, like a lot about coding, databases, scaling, infrastructure, like best practices, kind of how to lead a team, how to go about planning projects. There's a lot that's involved in the software industry that I think is kind of behind the scenes and people don't don't know about. But there's a lot of time, like planning is a huge amount of time in the software industry. Depending on the company, I mean, once you start to get up into big, like, you know, tens of thousands of people companies, you'll have planning for like months, you know, 2 or 3 months, and then you'll go, and that's like writing documents, that's getting reviews, getting approvals. Then you'll start writing code, and like by the time you get to the writing code portion, every single question that anyone could have, ideally, has been answered, and so the code writing portion should be relatively straightforward. Now, that's how it's handled at really big companies. When you're at smaller startups and you're just trying to get things out the door, you'll typically more have a process of like, okay, what are the product features that we want to build? And then it doesn't usually matter, unless you're doing something crazy bad, it doesn't usually matter how efficient it is. You just kind of want to do it faster than not. Like the faster you can build product features, the better generally. And so that's totally depends on the company. But I got a bit of a tangent there. I was talking about interviews, and yes, totally depends on the role, both the like industry role and then also the level that you're at. The problem can be solved with only 2 additional variables instead of hash map. Yes, yeah. So I haven't quite finished this. I got kind of sidetracked from this, but I was doing the problem in linear time, but not in O of 1 space. So the next part of the process here was going to be shrinking it down and not using this object here. But I hadn't quite gotten there. Sorry for the questions again. Is it more about understanding and how you approach the problem rather than giving the most optimal solution at once? Yes. So I would say the better way to interview, and everyone interviews differently. Everyone has their different philosophies about it. But for me, what I like to look for is like the instinct and how you approach the problem rather than finding the most optimal solution. Now, best case scenario, your instincts and your approach are the optimal solution. But when you have 30, 45, an hour at most of time to answer a question, you're almost never going to come up with the optimal solution. So really, people are just looking for how you're approaching the problem. Can you talk about the solution? How are you going to work in a meeting when, you know, people are going back and forth about different ways of doing something? Like that's generally what you should be looking for. And then how that's, you know, how strictly that's graded is based on kind of your seniority level. Yeah. Am I a front-end engineer? I'm a full stack. I would consider myself more of a full stack engineer, which means both front end and back end. So on the front end side, I build websites, and then on the back end side, I'll do, you know, server work, databases, infrastructure, that kind of thing. I enjoy working on the front end more. So like half my career has been like strictly front end development, and then half my career has been a mix of both back end and front end. I personally like having, you know, to me, working on the front end feels a little bit like working with hardware. You can see what you're working on more easily. Like you get feedback more quickly from people. I just find it more fun. I'm more of like a creative, artistic person to begin with, so it's nice having that like creative flair. But I'm more of like a full stack engineer than a front end engineer. All right, let's get back to the problem. So I think now I'm pretty sure I was at a point where like this should work. Assuming there isn't anything weird about this half thing here. Okay, both are accepted. And we're gonna see runtime should be okay, but the memory complexity is probably gonna be in the latter half of, yeah, okay. So Oh, actually, well, again, back to the leak code is, depending on when you submit, runtime can change pretty heavily. Memory seems to be relatively consistent. So yeah, like I expected, not a very good memory solution. Let's submit it again, see if the runtime's any better. Runtime's probably a little bit slow. Oh wow, that's even worse. Runtime's a little slow, probably just because of all the if checks. Don't know that that's totally necessary, but yeah, okay. So if I were interviewing myself in this particular problem, I'd say, I'd ask about the runtime complexity. This should be O of n at worst, so linear time. Linear time because we're just iterating through this array once. So that covers the linear time aspect of this. The memory complexity is not great because for every element in O, or every element in O is dictated by the unique number of elements in nums. So you could have at worst n elements within O. My team lead called the whole team my full stack engineers, but honestly we're a 5 poor one stuck on project with JSP and other ancient things. I don't even know what JSP is. Yeah, I mean, the term full stack is kind of loosely defined. To me, full stack just means someone who works both on like user facing and server side code. I think if you don't have the like user facing element of that, whether the user is like internal or external to the company, I think it's hard to call someone a full stack engineer. Java servlet pages, server rendering, HTML. Okay, well then yeah. Then yeah, you're full stack engineers, because you're working on server side rendering HTML. I've never used Java servlet pages. And yeah, it sounds like that's a pretty archaic technology. Some people love Java and will, die by Java. I am not one of those people. I like the flexibility of JavaScript and TypeScript. But yeah, a lot of different companies have code that's been running for 20 plus years, and some of that stuff needs to be maintained, and it's too costly to update it to modern times, so it just kind of lives there forever, for eternity. Okay, so all right, if we want to optimize this solution a little bit, I'll probably just get rid of everything because we don't want the object. The object is bad. We'll actually say, could have done this from the beginning. Largest is num sub 0. And how do we want to do this? I self-identify as a backend engineer, I assume is what you're saying. Yeah, to counter and for Selman. Next is the same increment counter. If not decrement. Yeah, that's kind of the approach I was thinking as well. I just wanted to make sure if counter is less than 0, take current element as main. Would that work? I'm just trying to think of the like. Oh yeah. that would work. That makes sense. So yeah, let count equal 0, actually count equal 1. If num equals largest, then count plus plus. Otherwise, count minus minus. If count is less than or equal to, well, I guess if count equals 0, then, oh no, wait, if count is less, oops, count is less than or equal to 0, then largest equals num, and then do you set count to 0? Is that what it would be? No. Okay, count then equals 0. So count should be 0. So, oh wait, you don't want to, so, okay, if count is greater than 0, then you can subtract, and then if count equals 0, largest equals num. I think this is what you're saying, basically. Okay, so let's walk through this. So we'll start out with largest. Count is equal to 1 because we have one element of that. If stop line 9 not right. Okay, hold on. Let me take a step back here and take a moment to just like think about this myself. We don't need half anymore. So let's take this first example, or the second example, where it's 2 2 1 1 1 2 2. So largest is going to be 2, count's going to be 1, num equals largest, so count increments to 2. This is false, so move on to 1. Then we have 1 does not equal largest. Count is greater than 0, so we're gonna decrement, and then count at this point equals 1, so we're good. Then we're going to say if num is equal to largest for this element, which is 1, so it's false. Count is greater than 0, so we're gonna decrement. Count equals 0, so then largest equals num, so largest now becomes 1. And then same thing here, 1 does equal largest, so we're gonna increment, so then count is equal to 1. And then for 2 does not equal largest, so count is going to subtract 1, so it's 0, so then largest becomes 2, and then yeah, so I think that works. Yes, Solaris, I'm trying to do the follow-up. Because I solved it first with doing it in linear time, and now I'm doing it in O of 1 space. Oh yeah, I think you're right. We do need to, yeah, that's a good catch. We actually we want to start at the first element. So instead of doing, I'll just do slice of 1 to nums dot length. I think that should be fine. Hold on. I sometimes get slice mixed up. So if we have let's just say nums equals 1, 2, 3. If I do nums dot slice of 1 to nums dot length, what does that return? Okay, that's what I'm expecting. So yes, that's correct. So I think this should work now. Good catch. Yes, that does work. So it works for these cases. We'll see if when I submit it, it works. And then nope, it doesn't. Expected 1 and output is 2. Yeah, see, this is what I was... Yeah, this solution I was worried about this because if you have a bunch of other numbers, that doesn't work. Yeah, because then it's just gonna find the 7 minus 1, 7 minus other. Not sure if follow there. Not minus. 7-1. I'm not following either. Alright, let's come back to this. Oh, event time and constant space sounds hard. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's one of those things, like, if you've done this problem before, super straightforward, or a problem similar to this. It failed because the last two elements were the same, only if lowest than 0 change chosen. Yeah, I mean, I solved it in event time, in linear time. Because that's straightforward. But I mean, this is like this is one of those questions, if you get asked it in an interview, it's, as an interviewer, like if I were giving this question, I actually wouldn't find too much value in it because it necessitates a very specific solution, and I don't think there's a lot of nuance to it. Like the linear time solution is really straightforward. You just use an object and keep track of the number of times each element or each element in the nums array is used. But the constant space solution, if you know the answer, then you know the answer, and you don't have to like work through a whole lot. Like, obviously, if you don't know the answer, like getting to that answer is maybe helpful for the interviewer, but like it's one of those, like, if you know it, you know it. If you don't, you don't. And the interviewer doesn't get a whole lot of signal from either of those scenarios. And the interviewer also doesn't know if the person being interviewed knows the answer from the get-go. Okay, I'm missing, gotta catch up with messages. It failed because last two elements were the same. I have done many problems, but I don't see what you're supposed to do there. Well, you rarely need to save space complex in conscious, so maybe tricks, I don't know. Yeah, in real work, it's enough. Yeah, I mean, and this gets back to like what you're looking for in an interview and what you do in practice in the real world are two, unfortunately, very different things. My dog is very needy right now. She might need to go to the bathroom, so I might have to hop up for a sec. Yeah, what you do in an interview and what you do in the real world is very different. Typically, the object solution is going to be good enough, or you're going to have databases or like be doing other stuff. So you can do a Monte Carlo approach. See, I don't know even what that means, and I feel like I should. Uncertainty. Oh, it's like a financial thing, and like maybe class of algorithms. That might be overkill for this. Oh, random approach. But I don't think that's what they want. Randomly picking a number and seeing which occurs the most. And also maybe you would need to store things. Yeah, I mean, it just gets back to like, if you know the answer, it's like straightforward. Yeah, I mean, I liked this approach, but it falls apart when wait, should it fall apart though? Hold on. Am I just like one line off? Because okay, so 1 is largest, then 3 becomes largest. Maybe that's the issue, is that 3 shouldn't become largest. So so count is 1, count is 0. 1 becomes largest. Oh, do I need to increment count here? And then would count become 2, then count becomes 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, that might actually be what all it is. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, we were super close. So yeah, Rayfied, I don't know how to pronounce your name. You were right. This solution does totally work, and we were just one thing off. So yeah, it's like, I'm not a huge fan of these kinds of problems. I very much like to give people questions about like building a product, like, hey, can you build this feature? How would you go about building this feature? Walk me through the considerations. Obviously that's like, in the edge cases and everything, obviously that's totally dependent on the role, but in the space that I work in, and full stack, like I work with a lot of people who do both web work and back-end work. And so there's like a lot of different nuanced things you can get out of just having that kind of conversation and then writing a little bit of code about it. I think more so than a problem like this, because people just study algorithms, and after a while it's a little bit like chess. You just see patterns, you see a lot of the same questions and everything. It's pretty rare that for someone who does like a lot of this, a lot of like algorithmic work, it's pretty rare for them to see questions that they've never seen before or some variation of it. Why does it work? You don't like? No, I don't like algorithms. I've always been someone that's like, I've been like street smart and like good at math, but like I like doing things in practice more than like the academia of it. And algorithms to me, in like 99% of the time, they feel like academia. And that's just not like my favorite thing to do. I like building stuff. Yeah, you're right, but that's pure algorithm set. Yeah, I mean, so like this is, the reality of the situation is that software engineering interviews have these kinds of algorithmic questions, and this is what I personally need the most work on. I always get the most like nervous when I'm in an algorithms interview, and so that's part of why I'm streaming right now, is just to like talk about the solutions, have people like give feedback and everything, and see how I handle it. Well, I doubt that there are many algo problems only a handful of people in the world can solve in less than 2 hours. Yeah, totally depends on the algorithm problem. Most of the algorithms questions you're going to get asked in like software engineering interviews are going to be ones that like most engineers can solve, within half an hour or an hour. Like obviously I was doing a lot of exposition and talking while I was solving this problem, but this was kind of more of like an interview style way of doing it, where I was, sitting down with someone else and like they gave me some feedback and I made some changes and worked through it and we ultimately got there. But back to someone said, why does it work? So, whoops. Where am I going? So why does it work? It's, anytime you see a number, you're adding 1 to the count, and so for that specific number, and this is where like you get into I don't know if any of you have gone to school for engineering, but you get into oh god, what's the class? There's a class with like proofs, like a math class, and so you have to be able to prove a specific like function or algorithm or theory, and so this is where like if I were better at proofs, I'd be able to prove to you using math formulas and stuff like why this is valid. But essentially it just because the count increases every time that element arises, and there's a constraint that there will always be an element that appears more than half of the time, that element by definition will be the last element that has at least count of 1. I think it would be something like the largest at the end will equal how many more times that number appears above half. So like if it appears 1 time more than half, so if it appears like if there's 11 and it appears 6 times, then largest or count will equal 1. If the length of nums is 20 and the largest number appears 15 times, then I think count would equal count would equal 10 in that case. So count would equal 5. I don't know. It's something like that. That's Mang feature. What is Mang? Like Fang, but with meta. That's Mang feature. So for anyone who doesn't know, Fang has been a term that's been used in the industry for a long time. It means Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, which is kind of the 5 biggest companies. But Mang, because Facebook changed their name to Meta, I guess is the new way to say it. Only the beast employers make algo interview. That's I actually haven't found that to be true. Again, it very much depends on the company, but nowadays it's pretty standard to have, if you have any kind of interview like structure, it's pretty standard to have some kind of algorithms questions. Common employers ask about previous experience. Yeah, so there is a aspect to the interview process, typically done with the hiring manager, where they will ask you about previous experience and like how you've solved different problems and challenges and everything. We switch when the current candidate occurs as most as anything else. Yes, exactly. Solaris. And then because there's always going to be one element in that appears more, then it'll always end up with the largest element. Are you going to be in the Leak Code contest in 7 hours? No, I had no idea there was a Leak Code contest in 7 hours, and I have no desire to take part in that. No, let's see, in 7 hours, I will be, there's no football tonight. So I don't know, I might be playing COD or something. Doesn't seem obvious to me that the last candidate is the good one. It's not necessarily the last candidate. So you could have, if we take example number 2, if you moved, here, if you moved if you shifted the 2s to the left to be right after, oops, hold on, to be right after the first 2s, then you'd have count equals 4, and then count would just subtract by 3. So you'd still have 2. So it's not the last element, but it's in this case, it's the one with the most hits. It's the last considered candidate in the loop. I don't mean the last. Oh, sure. Yes, correct. It's the last considered candidate in the loop. The contest is an extremely interesting event. All right, let me check it out. You've piqued my interest. All right, is this the? Well, it says in 7. Oh no, in 7 hours. Join our contest. Weekly contest 414. Oh, 414. What is that? Almost 8 years now of weekly elite code contests. Excuse me. So it starts at 7:30 Pacific. This elite code contest is sponsored. That feels late in the evening. It's 10:30 Eastern. Why do they do it so late? And that's like in the middle of the night for Europe. They should do like very early morning Pacific time. But I guess, software engineers don't tend to be awake that early. So that's not obvious why the last considered in the loop is the good one. So it's basically, I'll go back to this in a sec. It's basically, just if you're incrementing every time you see the number that's already been most seen, because the increment, like the counter is greater than 0, then you'll know by the end that that element was seen the most. You won't have that case though if the constraints for this problem are different. If for example this constraint did not hold true, the majority element is the element that appears more than half of the length of the array times. In that case, there's no guarantee that you'll get the most used number, because you could have, in that case, this example where 2 is the majority, but there are 5 other numbers that aren't 2. So you'd actually, in this case, 1 would be the winner. And so it's really just based on this constraint here that makes this solution doable. If you remove this constraint, then it's not a valid solution. And in that case, you might not be able to do it in O of 1 space. It was good to watch you. It's late night in India. We'll catch up tomorrow after streaming. Is there any way to connect with you? You can follow me on Twitch. Follow me on YouTube. Oh, you're on YouTube? Yeah, subscribe on YouTube. I need to set up here. Actually, let me see if I don't remember what my Twitter is. Give me a sec here. If I'm not mistaken, I think my Twitter is the same as my... Yes. Okay. So here, let me, I can just post this in the chat. It's the same as my Twitch. If you want to follow me on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube. Oh, okay. I have to type it in manually. Hopefully that worked. But yeah, subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitch. That's my Twitter. I don't post on it very often, but I might do it more if I'm streaming more here. Yeah, but thanks for hopping on, Viniac. It was nice to meet you and hang out. Um, in a week, you'll get a sport rating in your Elite Code profile. I don't know what that means. Oops. What is a sport rating in my Elite Code profile? How do I get to my profile? Look at that. 4 of 823. I don't know. There's got to be more than 823 easy problems. But maybe not. I wonder if that's like community stats or something, or I know I have another Elite Code account somewhere that I've done a little bit with, but oh, it's funny that they have like the GitHub submission thing. I can see it on. See it, Viniac. I'm glad you learned something. Whoops. Yeah, in that screen. Hold on, let me go back. Solaris, is your account the same as your Twitch name? Let's see, is it just like the URL? Oh yeah. Okay. No, Fishron. Fishron. Look at you. Look at you. It's like 400. Geez, you do this every single day? Holy cow. That's impressive. And yet there's still like 100-some thousand people that are ranked higher. That's wild. Oh yeah, you've done a lot of these contests. That's cool. But I guess when you know top 2.37%, that means there are what 5 million people or something, which I guess checks out with my profile saying that it was approximately 5,000 or 5 million. Contest rating graph. That's night. Very cool. Oh, what is night? 200 days in a row. That's cool. Oh wait. Oh no, night is top 25% site-wide. Let's look at those badges. That's wild. Yeah, I'm not that consistent when it comes to any of this kind of stuff. I mean, I only started streaming yesterday. So we're on day 2, but probably won't stream every single day. But yeah, that's awesome, dude. All right, let's look at this weekly contest just because it was called out. Sponsored by LeetCode. Register for the contest in advance. Oh, you actually like win stuff for doing it. I assume there are like thousands of people that participate in this though, and I would guess that it's not always the same people, but I would assume there are certain people that have won or placed in the top 16 far more often than other people. All right, 20 to 22k, 37th last contest. Nice. Hell yeah, dude. That's awesome. All right. I've been streaming for like 2 hours. My dog is very much barking at me. I also need some water and need to hit the loo real quick. So I'll be back, I don't know, in like 5 minutes. So if you want to stick around, stick around. If you want to go check other things out, do that. But it's been great talking with all you guys. And I'll probably work on one more problem and then hop off. So if you guys want to, stick around, I'll be back in a few minutes. What's up, guys? I'm back. I can't hear. Oh, did my music stop? It may have stopped. It's even playing. Oh, did that start going into other music? Oh well. All right, what I miss? You guys are chatting. Usually solve all 4 problems. Don't you? It's like 50% chance I solve 3 or 4. 50% I solve 4 or 4. Highly depends on how hard 4 is. Well, if 3 is very hard, I might only solve 2. My last virtuals I've been placing around top 500. Nice. Nice. Well, I don't know. If I'm bored at 7:30 later, I'll maybe check it out. But let's do one more problem here. I submitted this, right? This worked. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Just wanted to make sure. All right. One last medium question for the day. Given an integer array nums, rotate the array to the right by k steps, where k is non-negative. You can try the virtuals. It's a way to do a mock contest. Oh, interesting. All right. I was reading through the contest. Penalty of 5 minutes will be applied for each wrong submission. Wow. Hide some test cases. That makes sense. Final rating will be updated 5 working days after the contest. All right. Deemed contest violations, multiple accounts submitting. That makes sense. Submitting similar code. Where's the virtuals? Maybe that's in here. What's a virtual contest? Start a virtual contest. Get prepared for a ranked test. How do you start a virtual contest? Oh, you just click virtual. Oh, so this must be from like past weeks. Oh, previous contests. That's really cool. That's really cool. Oh, that's nice. So you have 413 different contests you can go back and look at. Or more than that, actually, because you have the weekly and the bi-weekly. Nice. For some reason, this was hard to see. Cool. Well, I might have to check that out another time. I'm, back to me saying, like, I'm not a huge fan of algorithms. It's cool and all. And I totally can respect... Totally can respect everyone who's good at algorithms, likes algorithms. But you put like a time pressure on algorithms with me, and I just like freeze up. It's for some reason me and algorithms are not like huge friends. But again, back to I like building product features more than I do writing algorithms. Given an integer array nums, rotate the array to the right by k steps, where k is non-negative. I did that thing again where I read it and I didn't really process it. Given an integer array nums, rotate the array to the right by k steps, where k is non-negative. Okay, so... Oh. That might be really easy in JavaScript, unless I'm missing something. Okay, so you modify nums in place. Oh, okay, back to the, more in place modifications. My thoughts on this. So yeah, you can't just set nums again. So you actually have to like shift everything. But in JavaScript, that's pretty easy. You can see 2 ways. I wonder what's the third. Oh, follow up. Try to come up, or hold on, let's go back to constraints. 1 to 10 to the 5th inclusive is the length of the array. The numbers can be all the way from -2 to the 31st to, okay, so 32-bit numbers, and then it can be shifted all the way up to from 0 to 10 to the 5th times. Try to come up with as many solutions as you can. There are at least 3 different ways to solve this problem. Could you do it in place with O of 1 extra space? I mean, the O of 1 extra space is just, it's basically like kind of doing a linked list type thing. I assume you just shift where the beginning is and then connect it on the other side. Obviously that doesn't work with JavaScript being an array, but I mean, JavaScript, the way I'm thinking of doing it right now is you just like splice out the numbers and then put them at the beginning and splice them in. It's really quite straightforward. And then, you know, I say that, but now I need to actually code it. So, okay, shifting to the right. Okay, so it's the numbers at the end moving to the beginning. There's no like funny way to do that in JavaScript, is there? Because you can access elements at the end of the array using negatives, but there's no... Yeah, so let me remind myself what splice does. Market do be cooked. Is it Joe Ever? Is it over? I don't know what you mean. All right, let's remind myself what JS splice does. So you can either insert or replace. Places one element at index 4. So we'll probably just wait, splice changes the constant by removing places. Yeah, so does splice return something? Return value, the array containing, okay, yeah. Oh. Can you, wait, you can splice in as many elements as you want? Oh, this should be really straightforward in JavaScript. The CS job market, mainly for junior developers, is horrible. You listening to Synthwave Beats? Good evening. Hey guys, what's up? Yeah, I'm listening to Stream Beats, Harris Heller, the Groovy album that came out this year. I was just like, what is a easy DMCA free thing I can listen to? It wouldn't be my top choice for this, but it's working. We're chilling. Yeah, CS job market. I've heard it's not been great. At the same time, I feel like the people that I know have been getting jobs, so I think it totally depends on the company. Like, there are a lot of startups that are hiring for positions. I think if you're trying to get a job at a bigger company, it's going to be more difficult. As for the job I'm looking for next, I don't know. Kind of depends. I have some, friend who has a consulting firm, and and everything, but I'm taking a bit of a break right now. But in getting prepared for job interviews, just decided to do some LeetCode stuff and stream it. Yeah, I'm doing JavaScript, or TypeScript more specifically. But yeah, with Splice, I think this should be super easy actually, because we can say const array equals nums dot splice, where the starting element is k. We want to delete, and we don't want to insert anything. Is there a way to do that? Yes. You can just do start and the number to delete. Oh wait, you can do the start and the number to delete. That would just be nums dot length out minus k. So I think that should get us the last elements that we want, right? Because you want to shift it by 3 times, so you'd want the last 3 elements, and so you want, oh no, actually, oh no, sorry, it's the other way around. It's nums.length minus k, and then you want to take k elements to be deleted, and then I'm pretty sure you can just do splice starting at 0. Well, let me make sure I got this right. Don't want to delete any. Starting at 0, you want to delete 0, and you want to insert. Can you spread like that? Does that work? I can't remember the syntax here. Yeah, okay. So in JavaScript, this is, I mean, I'll submit it in a sec. In JavaScript, this is a very straightforward question. Regarding the problem, what do you think about going layer by layer? But when you say layer by layer, do you mean like element by element? Because yeah, that's definitely an option. And that was kind of the first approach that came to mind, where you'd basically start from the actually, you could start from, go backwards through the array and just take the last element and put it at the front and just keep doing that until you've done that k times. With JavaScript, you just have a handy function called splice that allows you to do this very quickly and easily. As with a lot of JavaScript functions, they sometimes work in funny ways, and so I have to look up documentation. Because like I almost never use splice in the real world. All right, let's go ahead and submit this. So that wasn't 3 solutions. So here's one solution. I set another solution. Oh, we got one wrong. Wow, almost everything passed except this last one. Output was 1, 2. Expected 2, 1. Whoa, where k is 5. Oh. Funny. Well, I'm surprised that didn't show up earlier with any of the other test cases. So what happens here? So we have, yeah, what does happen with splice with negative numbers? I don't actually know. All right, so let's say nums is 1. Let's actually just do this. Nums is 3. Do nums dot splice. Nums dot splice. What was it? Nums dot length minus 5. So it still gets 1, 2. So yeah, what happens if you do like -3. And elements 2. Oh, that's how many elements are. What is nums of -3? Actually, nums is going to be m. No, to be fair. That's probably why. Because that, yeah, that'll just take, that won't shift. Quick solution to this one would be k minus length to only get the actual rotations. Not but reminder. Not minus, but I'm not sure what you mean, Intellion. So yeah, this works most of the time, as you can see, out of the 38 test cases. I think any of the test cases that involve k being larger than the length of the array starts to get funky. So actually, I think there's a relatively straightforward, because shifting it 5 times is actually the same as shifting it once. And so you just want to take the mod, is it mod? I forget what the full term, but the mod of 2. So like 5 mod 2. So you want to take k mod nums dot length, because ultimately you're you know, if you don't need to shift it that many times, you only need to shift it. So I think this should work, right? Because in this example, well, it's okay, we can start with this example. So you have nums dot length minus k. Oh no, you actually need to do, hold on. Mod equals k mod nums dot length. So you'll actually use this for both. So you'd have splice 1, take 1 element. So you take 2 and you just put it, excuse me, at the beginning. I think this should also be valid for like this example, because, wait, am I thinking about this backwards? It's supposed to be nums. Hold on, wait, I feel stupid. What is 5 mod 2 is 1. What is 2 mod 5 is 2. So what we want is 5 mod 2. So we want k mod length. Is that what I'm doing? K mod length. Okay. And then, yeah, I think this should work. Okay. Yeah, of k mod, and yeah. So I think this should solve that other issue. Cool. So that works. So, oh wow, you have some really fast solutions. That's funny. And then some really slow solutions. And there's 2 clusters. I actually haven't ever seen, I mean, granted, I haven't done too many LeetCode questions, but I haven't seen too many instances where it's like spread out that much. Usually it's like a bell curve right around the middle. But that's pretty funny. You have 2 different bell curves here. So as I talked about before, LeetCode, runtime and memory are slightly dependent on when you submit it. So it'll go up and down typically. Like here we beat 61% this time instead of 56% or whatever it was. So yeah, that was an easy one in JavaScript. If I was asked this in an actual interview and they said, can you come up with 3 solutions? Do I know time complexity of splice? I don't actually know time complexity of splice. I would expect it to be linear. I don't see why it wouldn't be linear, because there's no, I think it just goes to the element. So it would go to like element 3, and then it would iterate up to element, n, and then just create a new array of those elements and return. That would be my expectation. But if we want to ask ChatGPT, what's the time complexity of JS splice? O of n, yeah. So it's linear time. I think exactly what I was saying. Yeah. So O of n for both insertion and deletion. It's pretty efficient. And this is like one of those weird places where JavaScript kind of shines. I'm sure there are these exact type of functions in other languages, but JavaScript in particular has some, funky use cases like this. And it also shines just in that we're doing a modifying the nums array in place, which again I've talked about being a generally bad thing to do in a production environment when you're working with other people, because it's really hard to keep track of what is happening when you pass in, you're basically passing in a pointer to that array or object, and if you're modifying it in there and then expecting to access it outside of that function again, you just need to really be sure of what's happening and keep track of what you're doing. But yeah, I've been streaming now for a little over 2 hours. I'm kind of, I think, hitting my limit for the moment. So, thanks everyone for watching. I appreciate you guys who've been chilling with me. I've had like a handful of different people come through and leave comments and everything. I don't know, maybe I'll stream later tonight. If not, I'll stream probably tomorrow morning. Maybe even earlier than I am now, before like football starts, because I'll probably want to watch, or maybe I'll do it at the beginning of football. But yeah, it was cool hanging out. See ya, Inteleon. Thanks for stopping by. See you guys.